Space. The final frontier. For all of human history, we've looked up at the stars and dreamed of what's out there, but reaching for that dream costs more than money and technology. It costs human lives. Today we're not talking about science fiction. We're talking about the real, untold stories of those who paid the ultimate price. Explorers, pioneers, heroes. They pushed the boundaries of what's possible, and their stories are intense and heartbreaking. This video is dedicated to the astronauts and cosmonauts who never made it home. We'll look at the deadliest moments in spaceflight. We'll uncover shocking details, final moments, and the lessons learned. Because to understand our journey, we must remember those who fell. Some stories were hidden. They deserve to be told. So buckle up. This will be an emotional, intense journey, beyond myths and headlines. From training accidents to disasters seen live around the world, this is the true story of the human cost of space exploration. Let's get into it. The journey to the stars is fraught with peril, but not all dangers lie beyond our atmosphere. Some of the most profound tragedies occurred right here on the ground, long before a mission ever left the launch pad. In St. Louis, on a bleak February morning in 1966, this reality struck with brutal force. Elliot C. and Charles Bassett were at the pinnacle of their careers. As the prime crew for the upcoming Gemini 9 mission, they were poised to make their mark on history. They were highly skilled, deeply respected, and embodied the confident spirit of the space race. That morning, they boarded their T-38 Talon jet, the standard astronaut trainer, for a routine flight to inspect the very spacecraft that would carry them into orbit. But the weather was turning, deteriorating into a treacherous mix of rain, snow, and dense fog. On final approach to the airfield, visibility was near zero. Flying by instruments, C misjudged their position. They were too low, and descending too fast. He attempted a sharp, last-second correction, pulling the nose up. But it was too late. The T-38 struck the roof of the McDonnell Aircraft Corporation's Building 101, the very building where their Gemini 9 capsule was being assembled. Both men were killed instantly. The news sent a shockwave through NASA, a devastating blow to the tight-knit astronaut corps. In a moment of cruel irony, they died just hundreds of feet from the capsule that represented their ultimate dream. The backup crew, Tom Stafford and Gene Cernan, were flying behind them and witnessed the horrific crash. They would later fly the mission, redesignated Gemini 9A. In the aftermath, NASA implemented stricter travel and weather protocols for its astronauts, hard-won lessons that undoubtedly saved lives in the years to come. Elliot C. and Charles Bassett never flew in space, but their sacrifices etched in granite and memory, a solemn reminder of the risks taken by these heroes of the dream. 5 years earlier, and half a world away, another tragedy unfolded in secret. In 1961, Valentin Bondarenko, just 24 years old, was one of the original Vostok cosmonauts, training for the dawn of human spaceflight. He was on day 10 of a 15-day endurance test inside a high-pressure, pure oxygen isolation chamber, a routine procedure to simulate the conditions of space. After removing medical sensors, he cleaned his skin with an alcohol-soaked cotton ball and casually tossed it aside. It landed on a live electric hot plate. In the oxygen-saturated environment, a small spark became an inferno. A flash fire erupted, engulfing the chamber. The sudden heat caused the internal pressure to spike, making it impossible for technicians to open the sealed door until it could be equalized. Those precious minutes were fatal. By the time they reached him, Bondarenko had suffered catastrophic burns. He died hours later. The Soviet Union, obsessed with projecting an image of flawless success, concealed the accident. Bondarenko was erased from official photos and records. His family was sworn to silence for over 2 decades. It was a secret with devastating consequences. Had the truth of this preventable accident been shared with the international community, it's possible the similar pure oxygen fire that claimed the lives of the Apollo 1 crew might have been averted. A lesson learned in secret is a lesson learned in vain. In the turbulent 1960s, against the backdrop of the civil rights movement, the United States Air Force quietly made a monumental stride toward the future. It was a decision that would break barriers not just on Earth, but in the heavens above. In June 1967, Major Robert H. Lawrence Jr., a brilliant senior pilot with a PhD in physical chemistry, was selected for a top-secret program. He became America's first black astronaut. His destination was the Manned Orbiting Laboratory, or MOL, a clandestine military space station designed for reconnaissance, a direct precursor to modern spy satellites. When the MOL program was eventually cancelled, its younger astronauts were transferred to NASA. Had Lawrence lived, he would have joined them, and likely would have piloted the space shuttle. But just 6 months after his selection, Lawrence was in the back seat of a 2-seat F-104 starfighter, serving as an instructor for another pilot. They were practicing steep, unpowered approaches, a difficult maneuver simulating a spacecraft's glide back to Earth. The jet came in too low and too fast, its landing gear clipped the runway. The impact ignited a fire, sending the jet bouncing back into the air in an uncontrolled roll. The student pilot in the front seat ejected and survived. Lawrence ejected moments later, but from the inverted aircraft, his seat fired sideways, directly into the ground. He was killed instantly at just 32 years old. Because the manned orbiting laboratory was a classified military project, his status as an astronaut was not officially recognized for decades. It took a 30-year campaign to correct the record. Finally, in 1997, his name was rightfully inscribed on the Space Mirror Memorial. That same year, another tragedy unfolded at the edge of space. The X-15 was a legendary rocket airplane, a vehicle designed to be pushed to hypersonic extremes. On November 15, 1967, Major Michael J. Adams, a brave and experienced test pilot, climbed aboard for Flight 191. As he soared past 266,000 feet, a subtle electrical disturbance began to degrade the aircraft's primary control system, feeding him erroneous data. Unaware, he began to drift sideways at the apex of his flight. At the edge of space, with almost no air for the control surfaces to bite, he had no authority to correct the yaw. As the X-15 plunged back into the atmosphere, the slight deviation became catastrophic. The aircraft entered a violent hypersonic spin, subjecting it to forces far beyond its design limits. The airframe could not survive the incredible aerodynamic loads. At 65,000 feet, traveling at Mach 5, the X-15 disintegrated. Its wreckage was found strewn across 50 square miles of the Mojave Desert, because his flight had crossed the 50-mile altitude mark, defining the boundary of space. Michael J. Adams was posthumously awarded his astronaut wings. He had successfully reached the edge of space, only to pay the ultimate price when the machine failed him on the way home. For these pioneers, courage at the absolute limit is never routine. The pursuit of space has always been a story of immense courage, but also of profound loss. Each tragedy, a stark reminder of the razor-thin margin between triumph and disaster. In 1967, the space race was a relentless political engine. Vladimir Komarov was ordered to launch in a Soyuz capsule, riddled with over 200 known design flaws. It was a mission driven by politics over prudence. Almost immediately after reaching orbit, the mission began to unravel. A crucial solar panel failed to deploy, starving the spacecraft of power. Navigation systems failed. The capsule began to tumble uncontrollably. Communication was intermittent, but on the ground, they knew Komarov was in grave danger. Drawing on his extraordinary skill as a pilot, Komarov fought for hours to regain control. Against all odds, he manually oriented the capsule using the moon as a reference point and successfully fired the retro rockets to begin his descent. For a moment it seemed a miraculous recovery was possible, but the capsule's flaws were fatal. During the fiery re-entry, the main parachute failed to deploy from its container. Komarov activated the reserve chute, but it became tangled in the lines of the drogue chute and failed to inflate. Soyuz 1 struck the ground at nearly 400 miles per hour, killing him instantly. Vladimir Komarov became the first human to die during a spaceflight, a hero sacrificed to a deadline. Just 3 months earlier, NASA had faced its own terrible lesson on the ground. During a routine launch rehearsal for Apollo 1, astronauts Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Chaffee were sealed inside their command module for a plugs-out test. The cabin was filled with a pure oxygen atmosphere, and the complex hatch could only open inward. A spark from a frayed wire ignited the oxygen-rich environment. The crew's final, desperate transmission was simple: fire! In seconds, the cabin became an inferno. The internal pressure from the fire sealed the inward opening hatch, making any rescue or escape impossible. All 3 astronauts perished in less than a minute. The tragedy exposed critical design flaws and a lapse in safety culture. In the aftermath, NASA implemented a sweeping overhaul of the Apollo command module. A redesigned quick-opening hatch, fire-resistant materials, protected wiring, and a less volatile cabin atmosphere became standard. The changes delayed the moon landing, but they undoubtedly saved future missions. In 1971, the Soviet program achieved a major milestone. The crew of Soyuz 11, Georgy Dobrovolsky, Vladislav Volkov, and Viktor Patsayev, successfully docked with the Salyut 1 space station, becoming the first crew to inhabit an orbital outpost and setting a new endurance record. But as they prepared for re-entry, tragedy struck silently. During the separation of the orbital and descent modules, a single, coin-sized pressure equalization valve jolted open. The cabin's atmosphere vented into the vacuum of space in less than 2 minutes. To save space, the crew was not wearing pressure suits. They had no protection. Consciousness faded in seconds. Then, there was only silence. The automated systems worked perfectly. The capsule landed flawlessly in the Kazakh steppe, but when the recovery team opened the hatch, they found the crew gone. Since that day, pressure suits have been mandatory for all cosmonauts and astronauts during launch and landing. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger was set to launch. Engineers had warned that the cold morning temperatures could compromise the O-ring seals on the solid rocket boosters, but the warnings were overruled. With teacher Krista McAuliffe aboard, millions of schoolchildren watched live. 73 seconds after liftoff, the faulty O-ring joint failed. A plume of flame burned through the external tank, leading to a catastrophic structural breakup. The orbiter was torn apart in the aerodynamic forces, creating a national trauma broadcast live across the world. 17 years later, history seemed to echo. During the launch of Space Shuttle Columbia in 2003, a piece of insulating foam broke off the external tank and struck the left wing's leading edge. Some engineers raised concerns, but management concluded the risk was acceptable. The damage was fatal. On re-entry, superheated plasma entered the breach, melting the wing's internal structure from within. Traveling at Mach 18, the shuttle lost control and disintegrated over Texas. 7 more heroes were lost, another painful lesson in the dangers of normalizing deviance. Across decades, we see incredible bravery and devastating loss, hidden in public. Each chapter is written in fire and in lessons. Elliot C., Charles Bassett, Valentin Bondarenko, Grissom, White, Chaffee, Vladimir Komarov, Dobrovolsky, Volkov, Patsayev, Robert H. Lawrence Jr., Michael J. Adams, Challenger's 7, Columbia's 7. Safety isn't a box to check, it's culture. Listen to engineers, respect the machine, hatches redesigned, materials replaced, thermal protection scrutinized. Every modern safeguard carries their imprint. There is no acceptable risk with the vehicle's integrity. When you watch a rocket rise, remember the pilots, scientists, teachers, heroes. Our greatest achievements rest on their courage and their cost. From Artemis to Mars to beyond, the future rides on lessons earned in sorrow. They are the foundation for every mission to come. Remember the people, not just the tragedy, and the changes their stories forged. If you want to honor them, share this so their stories aren't forgotten. Subscribe for more deep dives into explorations past and future. Never forget the price paid for our dreams of the stars. Ad astra per aspera.